All right, welcome back. We are WEBD6201. That's client-side scripting at Durham College in the winter 2021 semester, and it's week 12, part 2 of our broadcast. So yesterday what we did was we discussed how to create a server with a controller, and we kind of restructured our code a little bit, where we had a server client structure. So there's a client and there's a server. And what we did was, just to revamp, we kind of talked about how we have a set of views, and in the controller section, we separated or decoupled the controller from the routes. So we have, let's say, a bunch of routes, register, login, and so on. And that's great, right? But what we wanted to do is separate the logic for the routes, as an example, and put the logic inside of a controller module. So the controller module will be right here. And we can see we have some success in doing that. But we want to continue with this thing as we continue logging. So let's see what we have right now. So again, if I was to run, I've already run, I'm here in the in Visual Studio Code, and I've already run the transpilation process for TypeScript, because we're using TypeScript with Node. And now I'm going to run NodeMon. So let's try that out. So NodeMon. NodeMon's not connecting to a Mongo server, so let's do that. So we'll say Mongo. We want to put kind of a command prompt. We're going to use Mongodb, like we've done before. So there's Mongodb. And then when we do that, you can see immediately we've connected. Okay, so that's the one thing. So Node, that's the first thing. We have a watch task for TypeScript, and now we're going to do another one for NodeMon. So we're going to do NodeMon, and when we type, it says it's already in use, right? Because we can't do more than one. That's good. But what about now that we've got NodeMon running here and the TypeScript task there? We have a bit of an error, and we're going to address that today. But what about in Chrome? So let's go into Chrome. Here we are for today, and let's go localhost 3000. Right now we have all these things running. We can log in, and we get this. This is local. As an example, we can edit. We can do some things, but you can see it's cycling right now. And the reason why this is cycling is because of the way we've structured our code on the front end. Let's go fix that problem. So we're going to come back to address this issue. That's another issue altogether, but let's go into the front end. So the front end code, and if I go into scripts app.ts, and if I go to contact list, so if I go to definition in my app.ts in my scripts, you can see that we have this auth guard. We can't do auth guard anymore. We're going to get rid of this, because what auth guard does, if I go to definition for that, is when I get there, I check to see if there's a user in the session. We're not using session storage anymore. So we're never going to find this user, and we're going to go back to login. But because in our code, so if I take a look at our code on the back end, if I go to the route, and here's our login, right? So I go to login, and if I go display login page, so go to definition, you can see that in the display login page, we check to see if the user already exists. And if the user already exists, because we've been routed back here, then I'm going to render the login page again, or I'm going to go back to the contact list. So there's our circular reference. So I go to the contact list. On the front end, it tells me go to the login page. The login page tells me go to the contact list. And we got this circular reference. We want to get rid of this. So again, going back to our app.ts, we need to remove auth guard from our code. And again, what we're doing slowly is we're removing pieces of our front end, because at the end of the day, what's happening is we're going to do a lot of this on the back end. So display login, I'm just going to go through some of the functions we already have on the front end. Display login, that's where we're going to do some validation. We still need to do that here, so that's a to-do. Okay, so that's one thing we need to do there. We have a perform logout. Well, we're not going to do performing logout here anymore, so that's gone. Auth guard, we're not going to do auth guard here, so that's gone. We're going to cause some errors here, but that's okay. Displaying 404, we don't care about that now, so that's gone. So these are all things that we can get rid of. And you can see that perform logout, that case we don't need to care about. Register, we don't have a case, we need one, because we also want to do validation for registration pages. So display register is what we want to hit. We don't have a display register function, but we will. Display contactless is good. Display contacts, we added all the forms is what we want to put in on the front end, right? The client side. So display login, let's make a display register. We don't have anything in there, and again, that's going to be a to-do for validation. We don't have that right now. Okay, auth guard, we're not going to use auth guard anymore, but we do need the delete check because on the front end, because if I click on an item, I don't want it to automatically delete like we did before. We've got this little function, so that is a key function that we need to keep in there for the display contact list on the front end. So on the client side, this is on the app.ts inside of the scripts folder in client. Okay, so that's where we want to keep it. And all the validation stuff, irregular expressions, all that stuff, those are all valid, usable functions that we can continue to use on the front end, but we want to eventually add a couple more for display login and register. So those are the two things we need. And now that we've done that, if I go back to the front end, or this part here, let's log out, and let's log back in. So if I go to admin, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can see that that is how it's going to look eventually. Now, how did I get there? Because I obviously have done a step ahead of you guys, because you can't do this right now. But that's kind of one of the issues we're going to run into. So that's why I took care of it. Let's log out again in there. By the way, logout, if I inspect, and if I go to what logout does for us, again, if I go into my console, or in my, my application, right? On my application side, right now, we don't have any key values. We don't have anything in my session. This is good. This is really good, right? So let's go into the code for logging in. Then the controller code, last day, what we kind of did was we had a display register page. We had a process login page, but our process logout doesn't really do anything. Our process register page doesn't really do anything. So when we log in, we do this, but we never really log out. And how the heck did we log in the first place? Well, I've gone ahead and created a user from the last class. So if I was to look at, let's look at a command prompt now. And let me show you what the user is going to look like just really quickly. So this is for you to watch at this point. So if I go Mongo, and if I go there and I clear the screen and I do a, and I want to look at, first of all, let's go and show DBS. You can see here we have WEBD6201. And if I go use WEBD6201 and I say show collections, you're going to see that we have a users collection now. We never had that before. And we're going to drop that and redo it in a second. Okay, but let's take a look at what that user collections has in it. So if I go db.users.find.pretty, you're going to see it has this, an admin user, which we want to make sure, and then this big long hash. This long hash is what the password is going to look like. Again, I've gone ahead and done this, but I'm going to show you how to do this now. Okay, so just to prepare, we want to make this fail. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to db.users.drop, which means it's going to drop the users collection locally. And dropping the users collection is a good thing because now we can actually do the registration piece. So we proved out that our login works, and I did it ahead of time. So this code that we put together, it's great. It works okay. Let's complete the process register page. But the problem with doing the process register and the display register, we have a display register page, but our registration page needs to update a little bit. Okay. One other thing we've got going on is this request.user and display name problem. We want to put this same kind of code everywhere, all over here. And that's going to be a bit of an error. We're always going to see some kind of error over and over again for each of these functions, right? Because that's what's going to happen. So we're also going to deal with this today, but not yet. First things first, we want to take care of our new views that we want to modify. So if we look at our, if I go back to our page, and if I go to log in and click on register, we have a registration page, but it needs a bit of updating. For example, I have first name, last name. That's great, email, but where's my username? I need to register with a username too, right? I don't want my username to be the email, although I could make it that. I want it to be a username because that's the schema or the strategy we're going to use, the username password strategy. Okay, so we need to modify this page, which means we're going to go into our views and we're going to go into our content area. And inside the content, we have a register view. There's our register view. So we need to do some massaging in here a little bit as well. So again, we're just going to do that. So again, just at the top of the view, when we have a problem logging in, we have a message area. So we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to say %if messages.length, right, is greater than 0. So we have some kind of message we're going to display. Remember that we use the Connect Flash module to send stateful messages inside of each of our views. And I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. So, and then we're going to put that down here. So close off this little piece of code. This is EJS again. And in the message area, we want to have a class that is alert-danger. And this is going to be the bootstrap class that's going to color the div with red when we have an error, right? And then inside there, we're going to have a messages object that we're going to pass into the registration page. That's the first thing we want to do. So to enable this functionality, because if I was going to try and use this again, right, to enable this functionality, welcome, Andre. We can't go here anymore because of our messages object, okay? So again, if I go back to here, and if I refresh, it's going to give me an error because it's going to say, well, I don't know what messages is, right? Remember, our route or registration for our register, we need to pass in an object that we're requiring. We're saying we're looking for a messages object, okay? And if we don't have a messages object, and I try and do a comparison, I do some kind of branching. If messages.length is greater than 0, if we don't have a messages object, this is going to crap out, right? So we need to do that in the routing. And in this case, it's the controller. So if I go back to the controller, and if I go to my display register page, which is right here, we need to reformat it to look like our display login page. So again, we're going to have this other error here in a second. To support that, we're going to just do one of these. I'm going to go into my display register page as an example, and we're going to go into this. So we're just going to put just this on different lines to make it easier to read, not because I want to make it longer. And we can see that we need a messages, a request flash message, which is going to be the register message. So I'm just going to grab this for now and put that in here. So we're going to pass in a messages object, but this is going to be the register message, whatever the register message is going to be. And we're going to set that up in our registration portion. We also want to do this. I want to check to speed that. So when request.user exists, then we want to set the display name to whatever the display name is of the user. But the problem is the user object, express user, does not know anything about display name. So we need to do some tricks here to make this work. And we're going to do that later on with TypeScript. Otherwise, TypeScript is just going to complain, and we don't need it to complain. Usually, it's indicating of there's indicative of an error or a potential problem later on. So we want to get rid of that. All right, so that is the same thing. We've kind of got this display register page, and let me just update that. So save. And when I do that and go back to the page and refresh, you're going to see that now we're back to what it was. We can't see any changes, but we now have a message area that we can inject messages. All right, so that is the display register page. Okay, cool. Let's continue working with our view because we need to modify it. So the first part is this. We have a form. The form that we have is not a, doesn't have a method. Let's put the method in there. So method for the form is the post method. Post method means it's actually going to, when I press the submit button, it's going to send a post request to the server. That's what this does, right? If I change this to get, it'll send a get request to the server, but then we'll also expose all of our variables. We don't want that. So first name and last name is okay, but I want the first name and last name, the name property or attribute is really referring to the variable. So first name and last name will be caps. I'm just going to keep that the same as what we've done before. And this is okay, right? But I also want to specify that this part is some personal information. And I want to put this underneath the row, like a little message that says, like, this is our personal section. So underneath the row area, so around line 15 of our register EJS view, we're going to go there and put a new paragraph tag. Let's switch it from EJS support to HTML. Just a second. So we can get our emit. So a paragraph tag with a class of lead. That's a bootstrap class. Inside of that, we want a I tag, right, with a class of FAS. There's our font awesome. And then FA-user-shield, a little shield with a user on it, as an example. And this should read something like personal information. So why? So this is a little paragraph that's going to be inside the div tag that's going to say, hey, this section is for personal information. So if I save this the way it is and go back out to here and refresh, now you're going to see that we have a little bit of a header that says personal information, first name, last name, and email. We could include contact number too, but that's not part of our schema for our user. All right, so that is that. And I want to continue. So we have our email address. Email address, the name should be capital E, email address. Name, again, attribute refers to the variable that's going to be passed along to the request object. Okay, so that's the variable. This should say email address in the placeholder. So it's going to display this, right? Placeholders, again, they kind of inject a default value. So if I save this and go back to our form, and if I refresh, notice that there's some things in here, right, in the text areas. That's the placeholders. Refresh, you can see now that it's updated. Okay, and we have a password as an example, but what I want instead of a password is also a username. So let's fix this up a little bit. So I'm going to kind of copy this whole thing and paste it just underneath. So we have two things, two passwords. Well, I want to change the first one so it's a text, and instead of password, we're going to make this username. Okay, because username is pretty cool. Going to make this username, and our placeholder is username. So username, right? So that's what it's going to say, username and password, right? And what I also want to do inside, just underneath the row, just like we did before, is I want to say, I want a paragraph tag with a class of lead, right, as an example. And then inside there is an I tag with a class of FAS, FA-database. So it's a little database image. And what I want to put in there is, this is the system information. So things like, or system identification is really what this is. All right, so how do I identify the user on the system? Well, I'm going to have a username and password. Okay, that's the idea. I also want a separator between these two pieces. So the personal information and the system identification, let's put a separator so we can use a bootstrap class MT4, which is margin top 4, which is a standard margin that we're going to use for this. And we also have a confirm password input, but we're not going to really do anything. We're going to do some validation on the front end eventually with this. So confirm password, all that stuff. Scrolling all the way down, we have our button is of type submit and our cancel button is of type reset. These are good. I'm okay with that, right? We can leave those the same with the proper stuff. If I press save and then go back to my form here and fresh, we can see now we have two sections, a personal information section and a system identification section with username, password, confirm password. Nice. And now our registration form looks a little bit more usable than we had it before. So let's put this up on GitHub so you guys have it too. So again, I'm going to go back to, let's just log out of, well, actually we'll make a new thing. We might need that again. So we'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say updated register view, git push. So that's going to give you your registration view that I made just now, which will help you again with your Lab 4. Again, all this stuff, guys, we're doing with our in-class exercise this week is going to help you with your Lab 4, which is due next week on Friday. Okay, so that's something that we have to get going on. All right, so it's wonderful. So that now that we've got that piece going, again, right? We've got our new register view. Now we can go back. We can shut that down for a second because we don't care about it. We can go back to our index controller. And in our index controller, now that we have a display login and register page, we actually want to have a process login. And I want to do now the process logout, process register, and process contact eventually. Okay, so these are the things we haven't done yet. And by the way, the process contact page, that's when I actually do a contact, and then it's going to do something for us. Okay. So like, for example, send an email or that kind of thing. So let's get into our controller for our index, and let's see how that works out. So our process login page was pretty straightforward, right? We went and we used the passport authenticate function. That's what you use. Again, there's some documentation in your PowerPoint about this week. We're going to do something similar with our process register page, but I want to do the process logout page first. So process logout, the way it works is really simple. You're going to be surprised how simple this is. We're going to do a request dot logout. That's it. That's our logout. So, and then we're going to res.redirect back to the login page. Guys, logout is done. I mean, that's really that simple. Okay. Just to be consistent, I'm going to kind of put this a little bit, one step down in here. And then now let's finally do our process register page. So what is this going to look like? This is a little bit more involved, but not much. Okay, so let's get rid of this for now. And we're going to start processing our registration for the first time. So one thing we need to do is instantiate a new user object. Okay, we have to do this. So we're going to say let new user, this is a kind of a new user that we're making, is equal to a new user object. Okay, and oops. Right, so that's one thing we need to do. That's our user document that we're going to put in. I'm just separating it so you can see the details here. So the first thing we need for the user object is a username. Right now, one thing is that we have some mixing of uppercase, lowercase stuff and whatever. It's either going to be either all uppercase or all lowercase, and I highly recommend that. So let's go back to our model just for a second. So if I go to models and if I go to user model, we can see that we have like upper and lowercase stuff, right? Let's keep one style. So I'm going to go with all lowercase from now on. So everything is lowercase. Username, email address, and display name. That's all going to be lowercase from now on. And that's going to affect our controller, because when we do a new user, it's going to say, well, the username for the user is going to be lowercase, and it's going to be coming from the request.body.username. Okay. And that's, notice the username is lowercase because that's how we left it in the registration form. And then email address, that's going to be coming from the request.body.email address caps because that's how we left it in the form. And then our display name, right, is going to be coming from a request.body first name, because we don't have a display name feature, right? Plus, we misspelled address, plus a space, and plus the request.body.last name. So what I've done here is I'm creating or composing a display name from the first name and the last name. That's what I'm doing. Okay. Again, there's no validation in our registration form right now. So we could really just put in a first name. We could put in nothing if we really wanted to, which is really, really bad. And we're going to get into validation in a bit. So that's the first thing. So first we create an object so that we can input into the database. We need an object because we need some information. And this object is the same thing that we've done in the past when we use the contact object. So remember when we did our all of our routes for our, and we have our routes still for the contact. If I go to route, and if I go to index, down below we have this temporary area where we did a find, where we did a post, and when I add a new contact, we did something similar, right? There's our contact, except I used these: full name, contact number, and email address. Notice that I can do it this way with quotes, or I can do it this way without quotes. So again, we should probably be consistent depending on how we do it, but for now we're going to leave it like this to show you that this can be done this way as well. So that's one. Next, I want to use the register method of the user object, because the user object is a user document. That's a Passport local document. If I hover over user, you can see that it's a Mongoose document, right? So I go to user.register, and I can pass in the new user information, and then the request.body.password. Oh, there's the password. So notice that we don't store the password as something that's clear text. We never want to do that. We want to, instead, we want to hash the password so it's not viewable. And notice whenever we go and kind of want to reset the password, we call IT support, the password. They can't look at the password and say, oh, your password is 1234556. They can't do that. Just say, okay, yeah, sure. Here, we'll redirect you to a reset password form, and you go ahead. So here we have, if there's an error, let's do this part. If we have an error, then what kind of error will we have? Well, it's some kind of error relating to an insertion error. Usually, typically, when we have an error here at this point, it's an error inserting the new user. Okay, that's what it is. So we're going to output that. And I also want to say if error.name, this is for us, by the way. If our error name is, by the way, this is what the errors look like: user exists error. If the user exists, right, then we want to use a request.flash. Okay, here's the message we want to say, request.flash, and we want to say that the register message, that's the key. Notice that there's a key value pair again. So register message, and we want to pass in something that says registration error. Okay, we're going to see that message in a second. And then a console error again, where we want to say, for us, this is again for us, error user already exists. We don't want to show that error to the client ever, because then if they know that the user already exists, they can hammer the password and try and brute force their way in. We don't want that from a security perspective. However, if there is an error, we want to redirect them, return, and we're going to say res redirect back to the /register page. So notice that we're gonna, when we redirect, we actually reload or refresh the page. But because we're using request flash, this will maintain state. It'll save our register message, this registration error, and inject it inside of the form when we have a problem. Okay, so that's the registration error. And that is if the registration error is related to an existing user. If it's some other error, right, as an example, then it won't give us an error at all. We can make other registration errors appear. If there's any error whatsoever, we can say that there's a registration error and rejig that. So, for example, right now it's inside of error name user exists error, but what if it's some other error, like, I don't know, we didn't put in the right information or something else? Then we can log that as well. But what if there is no error? We've done everything correctly. Then what we want to do sometimes is an option is automatically, let's say automatically log in the user, or we can redirect. We finished our registration. We just redirect them back into the contact list page. So a couple of options here. Option 1, log them in, or option 2, take them back to the login page and let them log in by themselves. We see that both ways on the web. It's done both ways. So first of all, let's just log them in. We'll do that one. So we'll say return, and we'll say passport.authenticate, and we'll say local, and we're going to pass in a request, response, and next object. This is the next object. So this is how we can do it, automatic authentication. So if they're already logged in, let's pass in the objects that we have, the information we have, and we'll do an authenticate, just like we did earlier in our login process. And then we'll res.redirect them back to the contact list. So this will automatically log them in and let them look at the contact list for the first time. All right, so that is our registration page. I think we're pretty good in terms of what we've got there. We've got a bit of, we have some bugs we have to deal with, but for now, we're doing much better than we did before. Let's see if we can register an admin user. So again, save. And if I go back out to the page now, and if I refresh, let's do that. So we'll say admin, let's leave the last name out. That's not good. We don't have any validation anyway, so we can do that. Admin at example.com. And our username is admin, lowercase, and our password 123456. We'll use that. And then click register. And if everything goes well, then it's going to log us in for the first time. And my friends, everything went well. So what happened on the backside here? Let's take a look. We have node. We have this big error too. We have this big, this is a bit of a bug we're going to deal with in a second. So we have a register error that's 500. That's one thing that we have a problem with, right? And we're getting this, hey, cannot send headers when I've already done these headers. I've already, sent these headers. Why are you trying to do this again? And we actually, when I went to the register area, somehow I got this headers stuff that came up. And if we do login, notice that we have headers happening all kinds of places. There's a register header, and there's another error there, and another one there, and another one there, and we've had it for a while. All right, I've been ignoring it. Even the login page has an error. Look at that. There's the login error, right? So we have some of these errors, and where are we getting these things from? Well, I want to direct you to whenever we res redirect, and if I don't do a return when I'm in a process, then what happens is I get this, rejigging of, kind of that. We're kind of sending the headers to the HTTP document twice. What I mean by that is, like, when I try and render the register page or whatever I'm going to do, I've already sent my headers, and because I'm forwarding from my registration page to my contact list, what's happening is that I've already sent information to the page and I'm sending it twice, and that's an error. So we can just put in a return here, which is interesting. Okay. And also we have the same error in our login function somewhere, right? So because whenever we go to log in, as an example, we have our display login, right? And then we do a return res.redirect, and we have a res redirect. So let me just take a look at these returns that are here, but probably somewhere we're missing one of them. And it'll tell you where when it comes down to how this works. Okay, so these are valid, and let's go back into and see if we can catch that error. So I want to log out. Okay, again, I'm here. Let's look at our errors as we're going, so we can see that we're good. So we're going to reset the server for a second. Okay, so now we have a brand new server connection again. And let's see what happens when I log in. So if I go admin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and log in now, it's good. If I go back to the page, right? So here's our brand new connection. We're good. We don't have an error anymore, right? We have a login page and we're good. Okay. Let's register another user so we can log in with someone else, not just admin, but someone else. Let's log out and let's do a registration page. Let's do me. So you can do yourself, right? So I want to log in as a user. By the way, a user and a contact are two different things, right? Username, we say Thomas, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And register, and we're in, right? Okay, so there's our error again, because let me take a look here. So remember that we rebooted and we got it twice. There's a login, right? This is where we rebooted. We logged in successfully right here. We logged out, right? And after we logged out, and by the way, if you want to see the, every time we log out, we want to show a logout. We're going to say, we can do it after the logout, like here, console log, and then user logged out. A little message for us, right? Let's log out. Again, just we're doing some bug hunting right now. So here is whenever we log out now, we're going to say this message, user logged out. Okay, user logged out. And then we have a get logout and get login. As soon as I do a thing, when I do a get login, the get page, right? I have this happening. So every time I go to the login page, I'm getting this 500 error. That's happening on the get page itself. So let's take a look here. If rec user, if not rec user, I want to display the page. If not rec user, I'm going to display the login page. I got this res redirect, but does it need a return res render? It does, my friends. And the reason why it needs it is because it's either this case or it's this case. It's one of the two cases. If I've got an error, right, as an example, then I want to if I don't have a user, I want to res render the login page, right? If I do have a user, let's go back to the contact list, right? If I don't have a user, I want to return res render the register page. If I do have a user, then put me back to the contact list. Now, that's not always the case, but those are the two cases here. So let's keep going. So anytime I res render anything, I want to be able to do that. Here, these little functions for contact page, not yet, but anytime we have that, where we have that error, then that's when we're going to get that problem. Okay, let's try and do that again. So I'm going to go back to this so we can see it. So let's, and by the way, there's no way You can't clear the page, but let's stop the server for a second just to do this, and then redo the server. So we'll do node mon there again. There it is. So we have a clean server we have for the first time. Okay, so let's go back to the page, and we'll log in. So we'll say admin, and we're in, and no error this time. Okay, and if I can do some stuff. I can look at this, right? We can cancel. I can add a contact. I can go, I don't want to add a contact, go back. I can try and delete. No, everything works as well as before. And if I log out, then we're good, and we have no errors anymore. Just from that little return redirect thing. So return, what it does is it uses the next function, right? And it doesn't send additional headers to the page, which causes that little bug to happen. So to prevent that bug, and that's a server error issue, to prevent that server error, and sometimes it'll lock up some people's pages, depending on the server that they're running on, let's say Heroku, then we want to remove any kind of bugs. So that's pretty good. So none of this anymore. All right, awesome. So that is the first piece, and we've got our registration. And by the way, if I go back to Mongo for a second, and if I do show, say db.users.find.pretty, let's take a look at that. We have two users now, one that I registered with admin, and the other one is me, right? So let's do the registration one more time so I can show you what this looks like. Notice that there's different hashes. This is the password. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I use the same password on both, but I have a different salt. And salt is like a key, kind of, for my hash. So here's my hash, and here's my salt. Sometimes we have salt and pepper. Salt on the front, pepper on the end, and hash in the middle, right? So, but really the hash is just a encrypted version of my password that is built on a 256-bit encryption structure, right? And what it does is it takes into account the time, some other things, on your system, and then creates its own salt at the time of creation, right? And then the salt is the key that helps us decrypt the password when you're trying to log in. So again, if a malicious user had both of these pieces of information, salt and the hash, then theoretically with the right algorithm, and there's easy algorithms out there, right? They could decrypt your password if they had both those pieces of information. So again, even though it's not clear text and it's inside of the database, it still doesn't fully protect the user if it can be viewed. So if someone has database access and they can look at this thing and they know the way it's been encrypted, they can use another thing to decrypt it, and that would be that. Okay, so that's kind of the way we want to do that. And we've got two users. We've got Thomas and we've got admin, and that's allowing us to log in and register, and that's really, really great. We want to continue now, and we want to separate some of the other things. We have our contact, but our contact it kind of doesn't work perfectly. Let me show you. So contact, when I log in and I go to any of these other pages, so home, about, projects, services, and contact us, it's like we're not logged in anymore. If I go to log in, it just takes us back to contact list because it's showing us, you know what, you're logged in, Tom. That's what it's basically saying, right? We have no idea who's logged in. We just know we're logged in, okay? And we lose it as soon as I go here. Why? Well, it's because of our display name issue we had before. So what we'd like is to take this request user display name idea, right? And instead of it being just display name, we want to take this and put it everywhere. But the problem is we're just going to get errors everywhere. Let me show you that. So it'll work, but TypeScript is going to complain every single time because it really doesn't know our display name. there is no display name property for user. And that's why it's complaining. It says like user doesn't have a display name. User being the express user. It's part of the express object, right? So there's a couple of ways we can take care of this issue. And I'm going to show you, I think, the way that I found that works. That basically removes errors from our structure. So that's one way we can do that. We also want to replace this. And anywhere else we have our anywhere else, it's gonna be here like this, that we have our stuff. Did I do that everywhere else too? No, that's good. Yes, I did. Oh, that's bad. So I meant to put in, sorry, display name is equal to. Sorry, that's one thing I forgot. I kind of overrode those things, but we're going to just fix it by just copy pasting in there. So it should look like this. So we're saying it's a ternary operator. We're saying, hey, if the user exists, then for the display name, take the display name object from the user object and inject it into the display name. Where is this coming from, this user object? It's coming from our user. Remember our user, if I looked at the user model, our user has a username, email address, and display name. So this is translating from here. It's translating into, we can use it in our request object, because our request object is getting username, email address, and display name. Okay. But Express doesn't know anything about the user object. So we're going to help it understand what that user object is. So inside of our model, so again, going back into our model, into our user model, we're going to do some funky business on the TypeScript side to help us. So on the TypeScript side, we're going to do two things actually. So far we're exporting our model, and then we have an export default, but we can actually have multiple exports here too. So the way we can do this is we can say something like, I want to declare a global. So we don't want to do this too much with TypeScript because, again, we're declaring a global variable. We're going to declare a global, and the global we're going to export something called a type. We're going to export a new type that we're going to call user document. And the user document is going to be equal to a mongoose document, as well as a combination of that, and this is kind of neat, like almost like a mix-in is what this is, and a document that has a username, right, an email address, and a display name. Every capital string. All right, so what this is doing for us is it's creating a type interface. It's not really modifying anything. It's just it's helping us, right, when it comes to how TypeScript sees this stuff, right? It says, okay, so user document is a new type. That's what we've declared, a new user document, and the user document is this. It's username, email address, and display name. So then what I can do, once I have a type, I can cast the express user as this type. And then what that will allow me to do is remove that error and also create some additional code hinting for us. So that's what declare global does. When I declare global, it adds it to the global scope. That means everywhere in the document, in the entire application, you'll have access to this user type, user document, anywhere we link our user. And if you want to see this, if I want to go into the user.js, you can see what we've done. How this works. When I do a global, okay, notice how it hoisted it. Even though I declared it down in here, it actually put it somewhere else. Okay, so I just wanted to show you this. Notice that it said that where is that user document? So, I mean, I did it here. Here's our user document, right? So global user document, right? And we did this. But when we do our translation to our user.js, where is it? Right? Let's see if we can kind of understand what's happening here on the back, how it converts from pure JavaScript to TypeScript, right? Or from TypeScript to JavaScript. So we have our user plugin, we have our model. These are all understandable things. But if you notice, Passport Local Mongoose and all this stuff has nothing to do with our new user document. Why is that? Because when we declare an interface, it's really for us. It doesn't really affect the JavaScript. JavaScript doesn't care about types, right? Only TypeScript cares about types. So what this is doing is it's actually helping us understand what's happening. It's really for tooling, right? For us to say, it's okay, TypeScript. There's not really an error. We have a user document that we're getting you to use. And that's why this declare global isn't destructive. It's actually okay. Okay? So there's nothing happening. We're actually not injecting new JavaScript. We're just creating some type hinting for us. Okay, but this doesn't go away. This part's not going away yet. Well, what we can do instead of having this is we can do some tricks. We can use some tricks here. So what if we were to declare a new helper function? So up here, we can have a helper function, and the helper function can be something like this. We can call a new function that's called, user display name. So that's our user display name function. We'll use the capital U just because. So user display name will take a request object, right? So we can pass in the request object. It'll return a string, okay? Think about it this way now, what it's going to do. And I can say that if I have a user, so if my user exists, then I want to return that user information, the display name. Otherwise, I want to return nothing, right? So that's something that I want to do. So what is my user? Well, I'm going to say that let user, I'm going to make a brand new little object, temporary variable, is equal to request.user, but I want to cast it as a user document. When I do that, by the way, it injected user document from models user. We can certainly do it this way, or we can also do it this way. Import user, and then we're going to say user document, right? You can do that as well. And from user, right? User document from user, but notice that it's giving us a bit of an error. It says module user has no exported member user document, right? So we were able to do it somewhere else. Let me undo those changes. Let me show you something. So models user. If I go up here, it says user document, right, from models user. Well, we know that it does exist, right? Let's make sure that it does exist here. So there's our user document, export type user document. It's giving us a bit of an error, but it just might be a TypeScript thing. So let's try this again. Let's show you how this looks. So again, if I don't have a user document, if I say something like, let's try this again, as user document, right? User document is a global, right? So once I put this in place here, right, it knows because I've declared it over here, and it's a global, that what user document is. So if I go back to index, I have this little user display name. So just like saying user display name, I have this little function. And now that I have this part, I'm going to say that let's return user dot. Now watch this, display name. It actually comes up because I want to, and I got to convert it to string because, just to be clear, because display name by itself is a string, capital string property, right? But what we're looking for is a lowercase string. And lowercase string is a JavaScript string, whereas in our models, an uppercase string is a model property. That's where it, kind of the string class as opposed to a string type. Little issues. All right, so this is our little helper function, and I want to take this little helper function, user display name, and I want to put it in here. So instead of saying request.user, blah, 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 all this stuff, I can replace all of this with our user display name. like so. So I can say user display name and pass in the request function. I need to pass in the request function because otherwise this doesn't know what we're talking about. Okay, so this is our user name display. So let's try that over. Now notice that that error went away now, right? Because we have a valid thing. So I'm going to take this out and I'm going to put this back over here. So it's like a one-liner where it checks the username, it decrypts kind of the username from the user object, and it's passing it into this function that I can use. Okay, we're going to do even more with this later because this is neat. But what if, I mean, I've declared it locally, this user display name function. What if I want to use this display name in other places? Well, that is another issue, isn't it? So I'm going to go here, and any place I have that, right, I'm going to pass in that function. That's the display name function. Okay. Nice. So what does this do? Why did I bother with that? And by the way, we don't need Mongoose in this case. Let's get rid of that too. And we don't need routing. Routing is everything to do with the router, so we can get rid of that too. So we don't need routing. We don't need Mongoose. So what does this do? If I go back to our projects page, and if I go to log in now, you'll see that it shows me my contact information, and now it'll maintain state on every page. It'll show me that I've got a contact list that I can get to, and it'll show me that I can log out on every single page because the user now is detected. Log out, and it takes me out. Beautiful, right? It's a beautiful thing. And that is our, we created that little helper function that's local. It's called user display name. And user display name allows us to do this little dance. And this is purely for us, for TypeScript. So that way it's also very descriptive for you. So it knows what this is. We're casting our request user as a user document. And then we're saving a reference to this inside of our own local user object, which we're returning out. Okay, that's what we're doing. So every time we go in there, we check to see if the user's logged in. If not, we return an empty string. Okay, so that is how that works. Okay, and let's put this up on GitHub. So again, I'm going to go back to command prompt, git add dot, git commit -m. And what we did this time was we completed login and registry. So registration and login is done. Completed login and register. Actually, login, register, and log out. Git push. Oh. Git commit -m, my friends. There we go. All right, git commit -m. We do that. We do all that. We pushed all those changes up, right? And let's push this to GitHub. Okay, and that's going to give you everything you need for login, register, and log out functionality. Okay, but we have a little bit of another problem. And no, by the way, no errors anymore. We have another problem, and the other problem is that inside of our roots, we have this in our index root. We have all this logic. We have temporary logic in here because of our contact list. We want to separate this contact list into its own router. And we also want to separate this contact list into its own controller, but we're going to do it in 2 steps. So again, inside routes, I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call this contact-list. So again, just like we're going to do a side-by-side here, where I'm going to do contact list on one side, and on the other side, I'm going to do our index router on the left, right? I want to move all of this stuff to there. So let's just copy paste, or cut paste. So again, where it says temporary routes, I want you to grab all this stuff all the way to the bottom, cut all this stuff out, and paste it over here on the new contact list object. One thing to note is that it's starting to complain. It doesn't know what contact is. It doesn't know what router is. Why? Because we never imported any of those things. So now we're going to do that on the contact list side. We also can get rid of this comment. because we don't care about that anymore. And our router now looks pretty beautiful, right? So our router for our index page looks great. It's kind of a list of all the routes that we want to manage routes. But at the top here, we have some stuff that we want to use, and we want to grab some of this stuff. So this display name and stuff, that's going to stay. But notice we don't need contact here anymore, because contact is really for this stuff. So I want to grab all of this, the top header for our index router, and I'm going to push this up here. And that should eliminate the errors that we're seeing in our page. So that's first step. First step, we make a new contact list route object, okay? But we have a problem because our contact list isn't linked to anything. Our contact list routes is not linked to anything. It was originally in the default router file, but not anymore. So let's just clean up some of this. We're going to clean up all these, so I'm just going to close them all down. And to help us visualize, I'm going to go into my app.ts and start thinking about how I need to put that in place. So at the top, we have Flash and we have an index router, but now we have to make a new thing called a contactless router. Okay, so import contact list router from routes/contact list. Yay, awesome. But now we have to use it. So first we import the reference so we can get all the information. And then further down, when we actually do our routing, which is down here, our router configuration, we're going to say that app.use, but we can't use ./ anymore because we already have a default route. We're going to make our own route, a subsection called contact list. Okay, this is going to produce problems for us in a second. So we want this contact list router is the thing that we're going to use for the contact list. So we need to make this configuration change on the app.ts file inside the config folder, because contact list is going to have its own set of routes. It's going to have contact list add, contact list edit, and and contact list delete. So that means we have to change our contact list structure altogether. So first of all, let's change our route. So in our routes, because we have contact list, if I put this in our main route, it's like me saying contact list / contact list. I don't want that. I want to just have contact list as my route. So I got to take this out. Okay, and this is where people get confused. They're like, wait, what? How are you taking the name of the contact list out of our route? Guys, we're doing it here. We're saying when somebody goes and puts in contact list, we're listening for this here, right? When someone types in contact list, then go to the contact list router. Okay, if I go to the contact list router, then if it's just contact list and nothing else, then do this. If it's contact list / edit, then do this. That's how this works. Okay, so let's save this. But now we have to rejig our view for our contact list because we have some errors in pathing. So going back to our content, and if I go to the contact list view, contact list.ejs, down in here where we say /edit /add, it can't be just /add anymore. It's got to be contact list /add. Why? Because add now is a subroute of the contact list group, if you will, all right? Or a subsection, sublink, whatever you want to call it, subdomain. So again, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to say, hey, I want you to go to contact list /edit. I want you to go to contact list /delete. That's it. Those are the three changes we have to make to our contact list view, and now we're good to go. But you're going to notice a difference in the browser. So if I go back to the browser now, okay, and if I refresh, and if I go log in, so notice that it says contact list as normal. Yay. But if I click add, now it's going to say contact list / add. That's the new root. Same thing with edit. If I go back and click edit, it's going to say contact list / edit / and the ID of the object I'm editing. That's what it looks like. So again, a little bit more almost like a subroot. So contact list is your main root, and then edit is your subroot. Okay, that's what it's like, or your subdomain. Okay, so pretty cool, right? That's how it works. But now what we've done, we've successfully separated our contact list roots from our index, our main root, or top-level roots. These are top-level roots, home, about, services, and so on. And contact list is subrouting, or subrouting, if you will. Okay, that's awesome. By the way, I want to point this out as well. If I really want to, and if I want my contact list to be something that's available on my index, that's great. But remember, contact list is going to be a secure section. So that's why I've grouped everything, including the main contact list display, as something that I can protect. Because what we want to do, and I said this kind of in our structure for our lab today, or our in-class exercise. In our in-class exercise, we've restructured the client server, we've restructured MVC structure, we've done an update to the TypeScript default exports. We already did this thing. We need to update our register view. We did that. We want to wire up a registration functionality. We did that. We want to wire up logout functionality. We did that. Now we want to create an Auth guard function to prevent unauthorized access. We can't do that yet until we split the roots. Once we split the roots, we have two roots, and it makes sense to the contact list side and then the top-level root side. Okay? And then we're going to migrate to MongoDB Atlas in a short second. Let's go back to this. So cool. I've got all this, and I've split up here, but we want to remove the logic, this part, from the routing, okay, like we've done before. So now we need, inside of our controllers, let's add in another file, new file, and we'll call this contact list.ts. So it's the same name. So contact list controller, contact list route. Okay, so that we can just kind of discern what each one of these things are. And that's how we read it, right? We read it from the inside out. We say something like our index view, right? Our index route. It's kind of like a main route. Our contact list route, right? Our user model, our contact model. That's how we read it. We read it from the inside out. So same thing goes with our controller, our contact list controller. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So let's split screen this again. And I want to get some information that we have from our index router, our index controller here. This is how we did our index controller. And we're going to do something similar to this stuff on the right side. All right, so we want to kind of do these things, but instead of models from user, we want to get a model from our contact. So again, if I go to the contact root, or sorry, the contact list root, right, this one, then we're going to have this piece. I want to carry this piece over into here, into my controller, because we definitely want to have access to the model, the contact model. Okay, that's the contact model. And what else do we need? Do we need routing? No, routing has nothing to do with us, right? We have no care for routing. We do need express, right? So if I look at our index, we do need express. Why? Because we need this request, response, and next function. So let's bring that in. Am I logging in? Am I using Passport for anything? Right? So no, I'm not logging in, but I may need to do some checks, if you will, of our whether we're logged in or not. Okay, so but we're not going to need this for now. So all we need is these two things. That's just it. Okay, and then we got to start thinking about how to drag everything from our contact list route, this part, into here. So what is this function? This is a display contact list page. Okay, so that's what this is. So again, we're going to have display page functions, and we're going to have process page functions. Two different kinds of functions, right? In our display page functions, we're going to have something called display, contact list, right? That makes sense, right? And that's going to have a request, response, and next object that's returning void. Okay, that's what it's going to have. So that's our display contact list function that's inside of our new contact list controller. Okay, so this is cool. We need that one. We also want to display the edit page. So let's just copy this whole thing, and this is going to be display edit page. Okay. By the way, we can say display contact list page to be technical. Right? It's a big long thing, but it's okay. So display edit page, display contact list page, and what else? Display the ad page, right? We have that too. Those are the three displays we have. Display ad page. So we have those three, and then we have a process edit, right? We have a process edit page, and we have a process add page, and we have a process delete page. We don't have a display delete page. There is nothing to display, but those pages we have to do as well. So let's copy these three things just to have a structure for them, so we don't have to retype a lot of that stuff. And we'll just change the names. So we'll say, so we don't need an edit. Actually, we'll just do one of these. But we do need a process edit page. We need to process the ad page. And we also need to process the delete page. Okay, so those are all the functions. These are all function stubs. They've got, or declarations. They've got no implementation piece at all. Just so that way we're ready to inject all the information that we have inside of a router in here. Okay, so that's one thing, and let's just start doing it. So we're going to grab all of this, cut it. That's how bold we're going to be, and we're going to put it in here, right? Because that is our new controller. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to grab all this in the edit, and we're going to put that in here. This is the display edit page. You got to be careful. This is the process edit page. So let's grab this and put it in the process edit page, and we'll reorganize how this is laid out. So grab all this, cut it, and go into the process edit page here and paste it. We're not changing anything. Okay, this is the display ad page. We're going to cut this out, and we're going to go into the ad page and paste it in. And when we process the ad page, we're going to do all this. And then in the process ad page code, we're going to put that in there. And then we're moving the delete code from here and pushing it inside of there. Okay. Controller, route. Wonderful. We have some really good, kind of functionality here. One thing we need to do now is inject that stuff. So we're going to do that. We're going to say up here, we're going to put in, the first thing is display contact list page. And we can choose, this is neat, we can choose the contact list page, which automatically makes a reference for us. That's kind of neat. If it doesn't, you can just type it in yourself, or you can use the little light bulb. So again, the edit page is display edit page. Let's do the other way. So I'm going to choose the wrong one. I'm not going to choose this one. I'm going to choose this one. If I did it this way, it doesn't do it, but I can use the light bulb to do it for me, just like I did in the past. So that'll do that part as well. Display edit page, right? And we'll do the same thing with this display ad page. Sorry, this is the process edit page. You can see that it's a process edit page, right? Process edit page. And we're going to move this because it shouldn't be in this. It shouldn't be here. It should be kind of down here, just to be in order. And we're going to do this. This is the display ad page. Okay. And this part right here, this add is the process add page. And we didn't do it right, but we can use the light bulb and add it in that way. And finally, the process delete page, which we're going to actually do right. There we go. So that is our router, and this is our controller. There's a problem. There's a problem. We're trying to do this, display name temp. What? There's no display name temp. Display name has to be that other function we had right from before. We had our custom function we had. And same thing with here and here. Oh man, does that mean I have to duplicate my work and create a function that does the exact same stuff as this? Wow, TypeScript, you're not helping me. You're making things worse for me. It's not true. What it does is it gets us to think about using a utility area that we can use over and over again. So instead of embedding our little function that we have a little function and we had it inside of our index controller, right? Which is this little function right here. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of kill the split for now. So let's go back to my index controller. So my index controller has this little function, user display name. I want to be able to use this user display name anywhere that I want. I want to import the functionality so I can do this in other controllers as opposed to just using it here. So I'm going to make a brand new structure here. So from a server, I'm going to make a new folder. We're going to call this util with a capital U. What we have here is Visual Studio Code's giving us a little extra icon, which makes it nice. And I want to make an index file in util. So I'm going to make a new file, index.ts. And that index.ts is where we're going to store our utility function. The only thing we need up here, because we want to support the utility function, right, is express. Because we need to have express, and we need to have the request response and next function, because we're going to have other functions like that we want everywhere, right? So, so let's get that information from our routes. So again, from our controllers. So if I go to my index controller, this line here, I want to pass into my util file. Okay, here's my index controller. And then I want to take this whole piece, so I'm going to cut it out. It's going to cause errors, but I'm going to cut it out for now. And this little helper function, I want to put it inside of this file. And you can see where I'm going here, I'm hoping. I want to export it. Okay, I'm going to have more than one of these, maybe. So I'm not going to just have this. I might have other stuff that I want to be able to access. And these are kind of little helper functions that can work in multiple files. So I don't have to rewrite this function over and over again. That's a pain, right? And it's also inefficient. I want to write it once and use it again, right? So this is the way we do it. So now that I've got this little function called user display name, and it is inside of this function called inside of the util folder, well, then I just include it. So instead of where it says helper functions, I can include, have my util functions, right? So I want to say import, and I want to import the exact function I want, which is user display name, right? From /util/index. And now I have that functionality here, but it's instead of it being locked into my index controller, it's inside of a util file inside my util folder. So that way I can use it everywhere. Keep that in mind, what we can do. That's really awesome that we can do that kind of stuff. So we've talked about globals today, where I can have a global declaration in TypeScript, but it doesn't really add any code. And I can also do my own little utility function that I can use anywhere I want. Well, let's do that. Let's use it inside of my contact list controller. So again, in here, we can include that. We can say that So these are util functions, whatever I want. One of my util functions is going to be, I'm going to import for the function that's this, kind of, and again, we can go from, if I go from /util and index, and if I don't know the name of my function, I can start like this. By the way, this isn't an error. And if I do kind of control space, it'll suggest user display name. So I don't have to think about what it is. It'll find it for me. And because I've got my user display name, then what I can do is down in here, I can just use that function. So I can say user display name, and it passes in the request object. And now display name for my display contact list page is going to be perfect. I want to take the same function, the same functionality for display name, and I want to put it anywhere where I have my user display name code. So down in here, I can do the same thing. And here. Okay. I don't think there's anywhere else. So that takes care of me reusing functions as opposed to me coding it again and again and again. I don't want that. I want to be able to use any of my util functions. I can have a space for it where I can kind of create a function, and then I can use my utility wherever I like. So that's a beautiful thing. And that separates my controller. So my controller from my route. Here's my route. And then it imports my controller. Notice that this is grayed out. My contact is grayed out because I don't need my contact here in my controller. I can get rid of it. Okay. Isn't that beautiful? So now my contact list is very easy for me to understand. If I was going to make a user CRUD, so if I, for example, right now all I have is a login and register page. But what if I wanted to do user manipulation? I wanted to do a profile editor, or I wanted to do something like that. Or I wanted to add, as an administrator, I want to be able to add a user and remove a user, like from my system. Then I would need a user model. I have one. And I would need a user route, and I would need a user controller. I don't have these things, and nor will I ask you for these things in Lab 4. All right, so this is really great, and I've separated my models. Let's put this up on GitHub, but first let's check and see if everything is still working. So let's log out, and I'm going to log in. There, we can still see everything as is. We still see this thing lit up. If I go to my edit page now, we still see this thing lit up. Before, we didn't. Okay, my edit page is there. And we can see that we're still logged in. We're still logged in because we can log out right from here. We couldn't do that before. It's actually not available. All right, that's great. So we have this. Let's put this up on GitHub. So we're going to say git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say we decoupled contact routes from logic. All right, so we did that. Hit push. We kind of created our own controller. We also created a little helper function. This is great. But now we want to protect that file, because right now, if I really want to, right, the way I have it, if I just go here and just go contact lists, right, I can see it, right? And that kind of defeats the purpose of me being logged in. Notice that I'm not logged in, but I can still see the contact list. This is bad, guys. I never want this to happen. In fact, I can even click edit and do my whole everything in here. I can edit it even if I'm not logged in. Let's protect the pages. And the way we can protect the pages is to create a guard, an authorization guard, right? Or authentication guard, if you will. So let's do that. So again, I'm going to go back to here. And where does this belong, this guard? It belongs in the router. So inside my router, so inside of my routes contact list, whenever I want to try and go to one of these routes, I got to check to see if I'm logged in. Okay, let's think about this for a second, this routing that I'm going to try and do. So I need to check to see if I'm authorized or if I'm authenticated, right? And what I need for this is a couple things, right? I need to check to see if I'm authenticated. I want to pass this information everywhere, right? So I don't want to just do it here. What if I want to check authentication in other pages? So that means I'm going to write a little function to do this, to do the check, right? If I'm going to write a little function, I don't want to be locked into my contact list routes. I want it to be available everywhere, which means it's going to go in my util. So in my util, in my index, right? This is my index utility. Now this could be like, like kind of my main utility. I can also have my authorization or auth util. I can make another little util function just for authentication and guards. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to make it so that there's a little function that's inside of my utility function, my utility of class, if you will, this thing here, where I can access, I can do a require auth function. Let's do that. So make a new function in my util, which is going to be called export function. And the new function is going to be called require auth or require authorization. We can also call this function auth guard. Okay, I think either one is a good name. So request, response, and next function. And what the auth guard is going to do is going to do the same thing as we've kind of done up here, but in a different way. We're going to say if not request dot is authenticated. If it's not authenticated, the user is not authenticated, right? Then that's actually built-in into the request object, right? My express request. If my user, if I'm not authenticated, then what do I want to do? I want to return to res redirect to /login. So that is going to be my little function. Otherwise, if I am authenticated, call the next function. Next, remember, is the next function that is in line, on the same line, if you will, the same request. I can have multiple callback functions. And what next does is it links this function to the next callback function. So I can do multiple callback functions, one after the other. Okay, that's what this does. So this is our auth guard. And it's inside of util. So then, since we want to use it, I want to do it only for, right now, for the contactless route, but maybe I want to use it other places too. I want to protect a page. The way I can protect a page is, actually there's two ways I can protect this page. I can protect this entire area here. So if I want to try and do any contact list, I can do this inside of my app. So for example, I can go and into my config, I can go to my app.ts, and what I can do here in my app.use is I can check if I'm authenticated right here, and I can put the auth guard here and protect my entire area, or I can protect one page at a time. So remember that app.use, right? Notice it has, how does it work? It has a, what I want to use, the route, right, as an example. And then it says any, that's what it looks like. We have a path and handlers, a bunch of handlers. Okay, I can have more than one handler. Notice that that is the case, right? So what if I put that thing here? Well, I'd have to import that utility. Let's try it here at the app level. Okay, we'll do this first. So we'll say that I want to import from / util my index. I want to do that. And from util, I have these two things. I have auth guard and user display name. I want to do auth guard. And in my auth guard, I want to say that I want to put my auth guard in here. So what this does, it says, okay, if I am not logged in, don't even let me go to my contact list. That's like anything in my contact list. my entire contactless router will be unavailable. It'll skip me back to my login file. Let's see if that works. So if I did this, this is my whole section. It'll affect my entire section if I did this. So if I go back to this, and if I refresh, it should take me back to login. And if I try and go there myself, if I say, I want to go to see contact list, because I know the link for this, it'll redirect me. So anything inside of that whole route, I can protect. Okay, I can do that. If I want to go to contact list and I have, maybe I copied the link, I was the user that copied the link and I want to edit this little thing here and press enter, it's not going to allow me to do it because I'm not authorized. How about when I'm authorized? Does that still work? So admin, I'm authorized, I can see this and I can edit. Isn't that a beautiful thing? So that is higher level section guard. It's a section guard. So anything in the contact list subsection, it'll protect. That's awesome. And that's a great way of doing it right inside of my my app configuration. However, I don't have to do it this way. Let me show you the other way of doing it. I'm going to leave it this way, the way I'm going to show you now. Let's take this little hook out of here, right? I want to protect page by page. I can do that too. Page by page protection looks like this, where I can go back into my routes for my contact list. I can import that little util function, right? My auth guard. And then I can just say auth guard. And so for each route, I can protect. So let's protect the main contact list, but not anything else. Let's see what happens if I did that. So just the contact list. So if I did this, and if I log out, and if I just go contact list, so if I want to try and get to the contact list now, no can do. But what if I want to do contact list, add, I can, right? Because this route is not protected, but this route, the main route is. So I can do route by route protection in the file or the entire section by doing an app.ts. That's the beautiful thing. That's where AuthGuard works great. We're going to do it file for file. It's not as efficient, but I want you to get used to this because this will allow you to know that each of these routes are protected. If I did this, and if I refresh, it's going to kick me out. But if I go in now, and try and edit, no problem. If I log out, and if I go try that again, not going to allow it. Beautiful thing. That's your auth guard. And so you can chain with the auth guard. We use the next function to chain multiple callbacks on the same request. That's what the get request does, is it allows us to use multiple handlers, as many handlers as I want, right? I can have more and more and more callbacks as long as I call the next function, right? And I can do that, by the way, even in my display contact list page. I can have a next function. Maybe I want to do something else, some other kind of validation or whatever. I can do that. Okay, so I can have a next, a next, a next, and keep doing that over and over again. So that protects our page, and this is great. That takes care of our auth guard. So we'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added auth guard. Git push. That's pretty good. That covers pretty much everything that I wanted to cover this week. Pretty much. There are some outstanding items. So we did this. The other part is migrating to MongoDB. We'll do that now, and that'll be the last thing we do for today. All right, so we've done everything, but we've done everything local, and I want to go up and use MongoDB Atlas. Let's do that. So I'm going to go up to MongoDB Atlas. If I look for that and I go to this list here, it's going to ask me to sign in. I'm going to sign in with my Durham College credentials. And it's going to ask me for my password and log in. And once I've done that, when I've logged into the Atlas, I'm going to have this cluster option. Let me just get rid of, I'm going to delete everything and start over to show you what it looks like, okay? So let's try this. I'm going to say, I want to, so this cluster, you create a new cluster. One thing it's going to ask you for is create a new cluster. All right. And I'm going to do that here with you right now. So so this way I won't disrupt what I did yesterday. I'm going to make a brand new cluster right now. So create a new cluster. It's going to ask me where the cluster is situated. Typically, when I make a new cluster, there are three options: AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Azure. It doesn't matter which one you choose, okay, at the end of the day, because we're not going to use these services. We're going to use Heroku. Heroku is actually on AWS, and it just basically tells you where you're pointing. So you can see that there's free tiers available, and those are the ones you want to choose. You don't want to choose the ones that are non-free. Okay, so there's one in North Virginia. As an example, there's one in Oregon. This is US East, that's closest to us. There's also Montreal, Canada Central. That's also probably closer to us than North Virginia. And you want to choose the data center that's closest to you. So let's just choose Montreal. Okay. Cool. And from a Montreal, we want to create the cluster. Notice it says, by the way, Montreal, if I was going to use that, it says it's going to cost me 54 cents an hour because it's not a free tier. Be awesome. We can't use this one. Let's use North Virginia. North Virginia is going to be it's going to be a free tier, right? So it's telling me that, by the way, that it says pay as you go. You'll be billed hourly and can terminate your cluster anytime. Why? Well, I want to talk about this for a second. So let's refresh the page. 51 cents an hour. Well, why did it do this for this part, but I'm not paying anything here? Well, we're getting one free cluster. That's the first thing. One free cluster, the way we do this, right? If I go to create new cluster, then the cluster tier is also something we have to look at. So if I go to Virginia, nice. Oh, hey, look, there's also, in Azure, there's also Toronto. That's why it doesn't really matter what you use. But Toronto is a free tier. So let's go, we use the free tier in Toronto as opposed to the free tier in Virginia, right? We have one in Toronto. Good. Cluster tier is in here. We want to use Sandbox, all right? Now it says, and I want to show you this, right? We want to do the free tier. This is forever, but it says there's a limit of one M0 cluster per project. And that's why we can't use this, right? But that's how you would set it up. You set up your cluster, you choose Sandbox, right? And I already have one. So if I go back in my project, which is project 0, right? I mean, I could make a new project. Let's do that. Let's do that from scratch. So I'll say new project, sure. And my project name, we'll call this, I'll name this project WEBD6201. You can name your project whatever you like. Next. So there's my WEBD6201. I want to create my project. Okay. And then I want to build a cluster. So this is what you would have when you first start out. Build a cluster for my WEBD6201. So build a cluster. Again, I want to choose my Sandbox. I don't want to choose anything. I want to do a shared cluster. So create a cluster free. Create a cluster. I want to choose Azure because we know that Toronto is close by for free. So Toronto. And we want to choose the tier that we want to use is the Sandbox tier, which is automatic for us. We get a free Sandbox tier. Okay. We can choose the cluster name, cluster 0, or we can call it WEBD6201 again. It has no backup. It's using MongoDB 4.4, latest thing, and we can just say create cluster. And then it's going to take time to generate this thing. Okay. So the cluster is called WEBD6201. The project is called WEBD6201. It's not going to complain, but it's going to take a moment to create my this project. You can have as many little projects as you want, but only one free tier per project, which is pretty cool. And it's going to take a few minutes to get this done. It says 1 to 3 minutes. So what we want to do here now is we want to be able to connect to my cluster and create collections. Notice collections, I can click onto it. Right now, my cluster is still being created. It takes time. And so for you too, it'll take a few minutes for this to be done. And afterwards, if you want to refresh, if you want to, sometimes if you refresh, you can see that it'll be done. It'll also show you that it's done. It'll do a push notification here that it's done shortly. If I click on collections, I can't do collections because it's still being created. I can't do a collection. So give it a sec. 0 to 3 servers complete. Current action provisioning 3 servers for my little cluster. And again, this is like really great because like we're not paying anything. It's amazing, right? That's why MongoDB Atlas used to be called MLab. I think is a great little solution for testing. And in the meantime, to get ready, let's get our Heroku site ready to go. So instead of waiting, we can do Heroku. So for Heroku, I want to make a new app for Heroku, and we're going to say that this new app is WEBD for me 6201 in the winter 2021 semester, and it's week 12B. That's you guys, and I'm going to click Create App. And I'm not going to link it yet because I want to make some things, but I've already done the Heroku piece because I'm waiting for my Atlas, MongoDB Atlas, as it's being created. So it says deploying 3 of 3 servers complete. Current action configuring MongoDB. And it's got a replica set, but there's no backup, which is kind of cool. And again, we're going to finish in a few minutes. Just bear with me, guys, while we finish this off. And for those people watching on YouTube, just fast forward this part until you see everything connected. You'll see that this says current action, complete or something like that, and then we'll be done. So we've done this part, and I want to push this up to Heroku, but the problem with right now is we don't have a proper link. Let's do another thing while we're waiting for this. Oh, there it is. It says, let's see if I can do a collection now. Nope, it says your cluster is still being created. It's taking its time. There we go. All right, so now it's done. My cluster has been done. This is a shared tier cluster. I can upgrade if I want. It's going to cost money, but I don't want that. I wanted to go to collections now. And in my collections, it has nothing, right? It says add my own data, right? Add my own data. I can also add a my own collection. So let's click on this, add my own data. It's going to ask me for a database name. We're going to call it the same name, WEBD6201. And the collection name is going to be Contacts. And I'm going to click Create. So it says an unexpected error occurred. Make sure that WEBD6201 is lowercase. Sometimes if it's the same name as another one, so I'm going to say WEBD6201, we'll say B for you guys, and the collection will be Contacts. That should work now. And if not, maybe it's because we're using the same name, over and over again. That's possible. That's why it's happening. It's possible that we're not doing. Let's try another name. We'll say WEBD6201B. Hopefully that'll work. Contacts. It's because I probably have the other name here. Yeah, I already have WEBD6201 as a cluster, and because maybe I can't use that at all for a database name, something that can't be the cluster name. It'll be confusing. So we'll just call this the portfolio. Again, it doesn't matter what you call the database because we're gonna the collection name is going to be Contacts. Let's see if that works, or if it's some other error that's causing me to have a problem. Yeah, so it's some other error that's having the issue. I'm not sure what that error is, but that shouldn't happen typically, right? Oh, one thing to note is I need database access. So I have a no database user. Let's add a new database user. My database user is going to be called Thomas. You can make yours. I'm going to auto-generate the password for now, and I'm going to come back here and change it and click Add User. I need that. I also need network access. So network access, I'm going to add an IP address for network access, and I'm going to choose anywhere. Add access from anywhere and confirm. Okay, so those are the two things I'm going to do. It's going to take a second for me to do that. You can also specify what IP address has access. So for example, let's say you are on a developer machine right now and you're pushing your changes only from your machine. You want that to happen, then you can put your IP address of your machine, right? Just careful. Or if it's an IP range, let's say you're doing it from work and your work has an IP range, you can do that so that way only when you're at work can you update your database. Again, these are security features that are used for that. And this is interesting because what this is doing is it's creating a network access plan and configuring MongoDB to access it. And once we've done this, then we've done our configuration. Again, this is just some pieces because we're working with an object that's online. So it's going to take us a few more minutes as we're running out of time today. And again, you may not have had that error. I have multiple clusters. You only have one. See, I have multiple projects, Project 0 and Project WEBD6201. So I can move from one project. Okay, there it is. So active status, we're good. I've done my network. Let's go back and go to clusters, and let's see if I can do that again. So collections, let's add my own data, and let's try that again. So it doesn't matter. The name, WEBD6201 is what it should be, and my collection should be contacts. If it doesn't work again, I'm going to switch over to the other one. Yay, this is cool. So now my contacts collection is inside of my database, WEBD6201. And I can add another contacts collection or another collection if I want, like information, or I can let my system do it for me. Let's go back to overview. This is my primary, secondary kind of access for my at Toronto, Canada Central. Okay. Again, if I go to clusters, one thing I want to know is the connect. If I click on connect, it tells me a few ways to connect. One way is through Mongo shell. So if I click there, it gives me a connect string to use, right? As an example. And the other way, right, is I can use connect my app through my application, which is from Node.js, which is what we're doing. So I'm going to copy this little thing right here from my application, close it, and then go back to my app. And then inside my app, I want to go to my config DB. And right now, my config DB only has URI and secret. Let's also put in an export, which is the connection type, right? We'll call this connection type. And we'll say right now, this is a local connection, right? So localhost. We can also say connection host. So localhost, right? That is our connection host. We can have that. But what I want is two URIs, right? I want a local URI. Let's rename this one. So we'll go to rename symbol. So instead of URI, we're going to call it local URI. And we're going to have a remote URI. And our remote URI is going to be the one for MongoDB app. So why do I need both? Because sometimes I want to connect locally and to test, and also I want to do remotely. So my remote connection is not going to be this. It's going to be the information that I get from here. Okay? So I'm going to go there and type this in. And I get a long string, which has my username, and there's no password, and we need to replace the database with my database name online, which is just WEBD6201. But I need to replace my username, my password, with an actual password. I don't know my password, so I'm going to go get that from database access. and I'm going to click edit on my user I created earlier, and I'm going to edit the password, and I'm going to auto-generate a new one and copy it. And then what I'm going to do, oops, let's try that again. I messed that up. I want to edit the password, auto-generate the password, copy it, and click update user. How about that? And then once I've updated my user, then I'm going to take that password and place it in here. And that's some password, whatever it's going to be. And yours will be different. Okay. And once I've done this piece, I have a remote URI. So now what I want to do is in my app.ts, right, which is inside of my code, way at the top here, I had a couple of connection options, right? One of them was my local URI, which is the thing that I'm used to connect to my DB config. Let's change this to the remote URI, okay? And this will be the host. That's going to show the host. And the host, right, as an example, if I go to my db.ts, should just be MongoDB Atlas. All right, so that's the host now. So I've changed these settings so that way we know. If I look back here, here's my remote testing URI, my local, and there's my remote URI for all the details. And this is, I'm specifying what I'm connected to. And if I look down in my nodemon, if everything went well, then I should see connected to MongoDB Atlas now. Look at that. So it kind of totally worked. I'm already connected. If I'm already connected, then if I go into my little site here locally, and if I can't log in because I don't have a user, because up online, I don't have that admin user. Let's add them in. So go to admin. And let's go to admin@example.com and admin and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just be careful when you do that. Click register. And now I'm registered. This is my site online. Let's add a contact. And let's add Peter Parker. So contact number and email address. Okay, add, and there he is online, right? Peter Parker is online, no problem. Let's log out. So we have log in, log out, and all that stuff. Let's check what happened on MongoDB Atlas. So if I go back up to clusters, and if I look at collections, now we're going to have two collections. We're going to have a contacts collection with Peter Parker, and we're going to have a users collection with my new user, okay? My admin user. All right, this is very cool. And what I need to do now is connect it with Heroku. This is the last step, guys. I'm going to go to Heroku, and I'm going to go to GitHub. But, oh, wait, one more thing we have to do before we do that is push up to GitHub, because we just made a change. So command prompt, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say switched to remote to MongoDB Atlas, MongoDB Atlas. Git push, so we're pushing to GitHub. And then what we can do is we can go to GitHub. We go to my Heroku app, and I can connect it to GitHub. So I can go to Durham Programmer and go to WEBD6201-Winter 2021. We can search for that project, right? And we know it is 11B. That's you guys. We can connect it. And then what we can do is we can scroll down to where we have enable automatic deploys like we've done before and deploy branch. We can watch it deploy. And then this should have everything you need after this. If we did everything right, this should have everything you need for your lab 4, pretty much, minus your content. Next week, we'll talk about a new topic, which is JWT, using JWT or JavaScript web tokens instead of using sessions, which are a little bit more secure. Okay, so it did it, it's launching, and we got the deployed site. And if everything went well, then if I go to view, then if everything went well and we don't have some kind of weird server error, then it should just work. There it is. So now we can go here, we can kind of kind of hop across. I go log in. This is live. And I put in my admin user, and if everything goes well, then we're good to go. Look at that. That's a beautiful thing. That means you can access it. So I'm going to put this for people who are online. I'll put this on the chat, right? Here's the chat. Try that out. You should be able to access that. So Nick and anyone else who's on the site there, it should totally work, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. So try that out, guys, the people who are online. And you should see that this is completely working. It's connecting from Heroku to MongoDB Atlas, and it's a completely online solution right now. We don't normally have to work or we don't have to work anymore locally. We can test locally, but we can do everything remote. All right, questions for those people on that we have on YouTube or even on our participants on Zoom? All right, so I think without any other questions, let's go back, and we covered all of this. So again, just to reiterate, due on Saturday is ICE 11. Test 4 is due Sunday. I'm going to set out a little reminder tomorrow to remind everybody that, hey, please finish your test. It's due on Sunday. That's worth 7.5% of your final grade, right, as an example. And then next Friday is Lab 4, so please connect with your partner and make sure you complete Lab 4 by next week. Again, Lab 4 is pretty much, I've covered, I would say, most of what you need for Lab 4. If you follow the tutorial that I've given you right now, you'll be golden for Lab 4. Okay, that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next week. Good luck, and again, please don't forget to do your test. I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm also going to stop recording. Take care, guys. Thanks so much.